All right, it's now time for the question and answer period, and I would like to, I've taken many notes. I feel like I'm back in school again. My classes back at the University of Minnesota in family social science. There are two trends, in my opinion, that came from each of the talks. One being the main topic of this panel, which is the contemporary role of the family in society. And so, and what does that mean? And although it was just a part of our first panelist discussion, but talking about gender and egalitarianism and equality. And so, what does that mean in today's world, and in terms of globalization and how small the world has gotten? How many definitions do we have now of what is equality and egalitarian? What does that look like for different societies, different cultures, different races? Of course, we pretty much know what the West says, or we have known in recent years. But I believe that's being challenged by globalization and the world getting smaller, technology, internet, people learning about each other, and the ways that other people are functioning and functioning just fine in ways that we might not think are very equal or egalitarian. So I don't know if who would like to begin, but if or who would like to add that to that, or make a comment about that question.
I'll do a couple of comments, which is I partially agree with the Egyptian lady who said egalitarianism or equality is something like giving a hammer to both farmer and carpenter and expecting the same things from them. It's treating them equally, but not fairly. But to me, equality is equal opportunity. That we have to have that. But we shouldn't be expecting equal results, as we cannot expect equal results from different men. We cannot expect the same results from different genders. It could be different. So a lady could be very good at art, and a man could be very good at, let's say, farming. So to me, it's equal opportunity, and being able to work anywhere that fits to your education, to your qualities. So that's my point.
Which microphone do we need to speak into?
I can, just give me 1 second. Yep.
That's excellent. I think there are a couple of things that we need to think about here. First, if we're thinking about this idea of globalization, that we're recognizing that individuals are embedded in specific contexts, and those contexts have histories, just as your presentation noted, have histories with regard to relationships between women and men, and how laws regarding women's and men's relationships have evolved over time. And so as we start thinking about how we as Westerners understand women's and men's relationships, we're coming from a particular historical context. At least in the West, we sort of have an Enlightenment-based idea of what women's and men's equalness should be. And we should perhaps not necessarily impose our understanding of what equality is. Again, the hammer idea, I love that. Oh, that's great. Because my own personal research is on perceptions of fairness and justice issues, and that's exactly the issue, that when we talk to people about what equality means to them, they don't necessarily talk about, I spend X number of hours doing this and my partner does X number of hours doing that. Do I feel like I'm being treated fairly is how they talk about it, not so much about a tally of what people do. Now, as we think about this idea of globalization, if we're thinking about excuse me, equality, we need to understand what equality means in a particular historical context within a country. what do the laws allow? What does the country expect from its inhabitants, from its citizens? Look at the Scandinavian countries. The egalitarianism that exists there exists because of xenophobia, not because of some larger egalitarian set of principles. So if we're thinking about the ways in which we want to export or import ideas about what our families should or should not look like, we can't necessarily presume that one size, one hammer fits all.
I would definitely agree with that last point, that I don't think that we could agree that one size fits all. And I think even looking from at different countries, I think laws and policies are written, whether it's on gender roles or expectations anyway, on gender roles or other family issues. I think it also, we have to look at individual families and cultures. And so we can look right inside of the United States of America and see different gender roles based on different families and culture. And I think many of those roles are, while some people may view them as egalitarian, others may view those as non-egalitarian, but they're comfortable with those roles. And so from my perspective, I like to think of whenever we're studying any aspect of family, particularly some of the trends that we're seeing, that if that role, that whether male or female is playing that role, if it is healthy and that relationship is happy, then I'm not so much of trying to make all relationships fit one model. If some people like those very traditional gender roles, then I think if that works for that family, we should support that. On the other hand, if you really enjoy egalitarian, more equalism, I think we should support that as well, and not try to make, and I don't think in the 21st century we can just say one shoe fits all.
Let me quickly add to that. Again, this notion of
what can we make people do? I think that in part we also have to acknowledge that the structural constraints under which we operate, so this would be either national laws regarding who can apply for certain kinds of jobs or who can go out and do certain things, that we have to acknowledge that if we believe in, or if we want our culture or society to have the option of egalitarianism or something more traditional, that our cultural laws and mores, as well as the things that are really real, like you'll get arrested if you don't do this correctly, perhaps need to facilitate those. And as we think about historical change, the times when we have seen the greatest historical change has been this policy level change, so the no-fault divorce law, for example. When we started seeing that become more real in a variety of states, we saw a rapid transition and change in family in the United States. That was a law that allowed for a great deal of change. People were already figuring out how to get around it at the individual level. This was just a macro level change. So if we believe that people should have the ability to do the things that is right for their families, whether they be more egalitarian or more traditional or some blend thereof, whatever the definition is for them, then we need to facilitate the policies, national level, corporation level, university level, state level, all different kinds of levels, the policies that will allow people to have that human agency. So again, being able to marry or not and still be able to take care of their family. Be able to work outside of the home or not, and the family not worry about losing their home. In the contemporary idea of the United States, whether or not you have health care. Those kinds of things are outside necessarily the purview of the person, but have direct impact as to what happens in the family. So as we think about other models, for example, other laws from other countries, other cultural ways of understanding how family relationships can work, perhaps trying to make sense out of opportunities for all families to live up to their greatest potential. is a way that we can move forward rather than, again, I'm liking the hammer and I'm liking the shoe, so that we're not trying to impose a specific will on any kind of group.
I'd like to add something as well, because while you're talking, things comes to your mind. Right? I'm a huge critic of modernists as a historian because they see the history through the eyes of people in the center, like through Sultan's eyes, through elite people's eyes, lawmakers' eyes. Of course, it's a huge step to make laws. That's very important. It's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between having laws or not having those kinds of laws. But as a social historian, I'd like to see the application of those laws, because we are human beings and we love bypassing those kinds of laws. We want to break laws, and there's a saying that laws are for to break, not to obey. It's a saying, but we love doing that. So we, as people of the modern world, we have to see our societies not only promulgating laws and regulations, but also applying those with their whole heart, with believing in them, not just because it's law you are doing it. No, it has to be. We have to engrave it in their minds and hearts, which is very important. Otherwise, if there's any power vacuum, any kind of power vacuum, could be a lazy inspector or something else, they would just bypass it, and which is not going to help our society.
And I think actually that covers all three of our presentations here today, that we have to look not only at the macro level, the institutions that exist, the laws that exist, but we also have to look at the internalization of those and the interplay between the two, because while the laws may exist or while the laws may have historically existed, people are still living their own lives and are bumping up against them, and perhaps in an attempt to change the law or to figure out how to make it work and their own perspectives. And as we do global comparisons, we can see that very clearly. That there may be similar kinds of laws and institutions cross-nationally, cross-culturally, but people respond to them, families respond to them very, very differently. And again, the examples of the diversity within the United States, we all live broadly under the same laws, take a minute, and yet our lives look different. So I think it's very important to recognize this interplay of both what can structurally be facilitated or not allowed, but also you're absolutely right, the human agency, what's happening at the individual level, and the interplay between the two. And I think that if we don't do enough study of our history, not only are we bound to repeat it, we're bound to do it worse. So understanding how these cultural shifts can help us make sense of going forward in the future with this interplay. Again, depending upon what your definition of or how you want, or how a society wants families to be organized.